Hey guys, so this is fairly long overdue video that I was going to do shortly after the birth of my son, and then life just took over. So it's been a while since I filmed a YouTube video, and for those of you who already follow me will know that usually I record fitness content because I am an online women's body transformation coach, but I wanted to give you guys a life update, but more so focus on my own experience as a first time geriatric mum. So for those of you in the UK who have experienced being in the NHS, you will have been referred to as a geriatric mum. I think it's if you're 35 or over. So I guess we'll just rewind straight back to the beginning. So as I say, I'm going to talk to you about my first time birth experience, what that was like, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about my postpartum experience. And I really wanted to do this because I feel like there is not enough sort of real raw truth out there. Especially when it comes to women in the UK doing their birth stories. Every time I've searched for people's birth stories, I either seem to get American stories or Australian stories, which is great, and the women that I've watched are fantastic, but I do think it's nice when you are a woman in the UK to also listen to a fellow Brit, because you're likely to be in the NHS system, and you know, I can talk about my own experiences there as well. So at the time of giving birth to my son, I was actually 36 years old. So this was my first child. I didn't do any hypnobirthing. I didn't do any sort of breathing prep or anything like that. I was just in the mindset of birth is natural. You know, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I am here for it. Like, I am going to go into this and just let my body do its thing. So I mean, I'd read stuff online, you know, I'd watched videos. I wanted to sort of prepare myself for different eventualities, but I also, I guess, I had that first time maybe naivety about me, and I think also because I am someone who takes care of myself, and I guess you could say I was a relatively, you know, fit person for being a geriatric mother. It didn't really worry me so much. I just figured that I would take it all in my stride. People did used to joke saying, oh, you know, you'll be absolutely fine when you give birth because you do a load of squats, you've got a really strong core, like you will just slip him out like shelling a pea. So yeah, we'll talk about that. So take it back. I was in lockdown at the time, so I was actually pregnant in lockdown in 2020. I was due to go on maternity leave on the Tuesday. So rewind to the early hours of Sunday morning. So it was about 3 a.m. Sunday morning, and I was lying in bed, and I just felt this hot trickle of water down the inside of my legs, and I genuinely thought I was having a wee, and that because baby was so big, because at this point I was 35 weeks pregnant. Okay, so at this point I just thought, baby's so big, baby's obviously pressing on my bladder, this must just be one of those things that happens in pregnancy, because I wasn't thinking, you know, my waters would be breaking or that I was going to go into labour or anything like that. So I went to the toilet, and this pee just kept pouring out of me to the point where it was literally like pouring out of me, splashing onto the carpet. Sorry, too much info. And I just thought, this doesn't seem right. I've been to the toilet, had a wee, but then the wee's still coming, so maybe it's not wee. Did a bit googling as you do, and yeah, I decided to go back to bed. Not sure whether that was the right thing to do, but I was listening to my body at the time. I was absolutely knackered, and the leaking fluid seemed to have slowed down. Went back to bed, and I think I was up again at sort of 6, 7 in the morning, and I started to get what felt like period pains. So obviously now, you know, looking back and what I know now, that was the onset of early labour, the very, very, very early stages. So I was having a little bit of mild cramping, no contractions, nothing like that. I called the hospital, called the maternity unit, and they said, could you come in at 3 o'clock? So this was on the Sunday afternoon. What we'll do is we will test to see if your waters have broken, and we will test baby's heart rate, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to have a bit of my brew. Oh yeah, I needed that. So I went into the hospital 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and of course, because it was during lockdown, COVID times, I had to go in on my own. So baby's dad couldn't be there. Got strapped up, had the baby heart rate belt monitor put around me, and they said baby's heart rate's fine. We're just going to test your fluids down below, and then we will see what's going on. So the nurse came back and said that she had detected that in fact my waters had broken. So then what happened is they decided to admit me onto the ward. Because my waters had broken, they wanted to check my cervix just to see if it had started dilating. However, I had said that at this point I hadn't really had what I felt were contractions. Later that day, when I was admitted to the ward, I did start to feel more specific cramping, so that they were contractions. They examined me and they said, your cervix is completely shut. They did say that they wanted to administer various different drugs because there was an elevated risk of infection to baby. I had my own reasons for deciding against certain things. I won't go into too much detail. At the end of the day, you know, as a mother, it is your choice as to what medications you choose to administer, you know, during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about my choices as well when it comes to the birth plan and you know, what I wanted when I gave birth. They said to me that they would send me home, so they would send me home on the Monday, and that they would get me back in 2 weeks' time to potentially induce the baby if there hadn't been any sign, and they felt that it was likely that that was going to happen. So that was the Monday morning. I was able to get out of the hospital. Got home, and then I was having contractions throughout the day. I downloaded a contraction timer onto my mobile phone, which was really handy actually. Some people say you shouldn't time your contractions. There's a lot of sort of, you know, I guess you could call them new age birthing vloggers and doulas now online, and you know, people will say like ditch the contraction apps, but at the time I was just going off the, I guess, you know, the mainstream NHS guidance, and the reason why is because they were saying that when contractions get so close apart, then that's the time to call us to come in, because you know, you could be close to birth. So the Monday was kind of just sort of hit and miss when it comes to contractions. Like, they would cluster for 2 or 3 hours and then they would really slow down. And then they would cluster again and then really slow down. Now, I went to bed at about 10 o'clock on the Monday night, and then I was awake at about 1 or 2 in the morning. And what woke me was intense pain. it was that uncomfortable that it woke me up. So again, contractions. I did actually manage to fall back to sleep again at about 2:30. So I probably did just sleep through some of the contractions and some of the pain, which is never a bad thing really if you can do that. I think if you can sleep, that's great. It's what your body wants. And then all I can describe Tuesday morning as is just horrific. So this is why I'm going to go into the detail, and this is the absolute truth. I'm like a self-proclaimed tough woman, you know. Like I said, you know, I was fit, I was training, I was deadlifting, you know, like 140 kilograms. I thought I was a tough little cookie until birth. It absolutely ended me. And I'm not a dramatic person, like honestly, like it's almost embarrassing because I'm just that person that's like, bring it on, you know, like come on, we can do this. I couldn't do it. So yeah, Tuesday morning was horrendous. So the pains were that bad, I could not even get up off the bed. Like I would get up and then I would try and do a task, so like go to get some clothes, and then I would just keel over again. Obviously the contractions coming and going. When the contractions stopped and I got like 60 to 90 seconds of relief, I would attempt to go and do another task. So like eat some food, because I felt like, God, if I'm going to be giving birth today, then I really want some stamina, I need some fuel. Haven't eaten all, you know, since like the day before. So I was trying to get my priorities right. I was like, you need to get hydrated, you need to get some food, because if you're going into hospital from this point, you're probably not going to get either of those things, food or water. So you need to sort yourself out. But it was just a shit show. It was a shit show. I honestly got to the point where I genuinely didn't know what was going to be best, or if I could even get in the car. Whether I felt like, at the time, I felt like calling for an ambulance, because I genuinely felt like I couldn't get out of the house to get in the car. I felt like calling an ambulance would be the worst option because it'd be the longest option. But I also didn't feel capable of getting out of the house. Like I could barely even get off the bed to dress myself, which is ridiculous, because of all the videos that I've watched on YouTube of people's birth stories, I don't think any of them I have seen where someone has been that debilitated that they haven't been able to, you know, at least walk. I mean, you see, there's a series in the UK, for those of you guys that are watching in the States, called One Born Every Minute. And you see a lot of the women being admitted into hospital and they're still walking. Like that was not the case with me. So obviously now, you know, having watched loads of birth stories and listened to friends and all the rest of it, I now understand everybody's birth story is different. So I don't want my story to scare you. I just want to be open and truthful with you about my own experience, because I'm not going to lie, it was nothing like I thought it would be. And you can say like, oh, you know, I wish people would tell me the truth. I think the fact of the matter is that I didn't know anybody that had actually been through this type of birth. So there was no one to tell me like it's going to be absolutely horrendous. Like you're going to feel like a tank has parked on your entire body. I just cannot explain it. But yeah, there are other people who like, yeah, they say it's painful, but they, like I say, they've still been able to get up. You know, like you see women who are in at home on the birthing ball, like they know that they're in early labour, they're getting contractions, and it wasn't like that for me. Maybe the day that I should have been on the birthing ball was the day where I got sent from the hospital, but given the fact that I was just over 35 weeks pregnant, it was all just such a shock, because as I say, in my head I still had like maybe 4 weeks left of just nesting, going to IKEA. You know, it was really nice weather at the time, so I was just getting set to go on maternity leave, and all I planned to do was really just get everything I needed for the baby and sunbathe. and get plenty of vitamin D and just relax and chill. But it really just, it wasn't like that. Just to put things in context as well, it was lockdown, but I also had a lot of other stuff going on. And my dad at the time was terminally ill, and I don't know if the stress of going through that had an impact or whether it was something else. And you know, I mean, the day that my waters broke, I was rushing around like a blue horsefly, and I was doing birthday preparations, and I was it was a hot day, and I was making food, running in and out of the house, and I was prepping for like a barbecue. And I'm normally someone that drinks a lot, and you know, I'm conscious about what I eat, as in eating enough. And I remember that day, like, I hadn't drank very much. I'd eaten food which had been sort of outside in the heat. So you never know, it could have been I ate something that's caused me to have an infection, and then, you know, body's done its job saying, right, we need to get this baby out. Just don't know. But just to put things in context, it was not a happy time. It was not the happy time that you would expect for your first pregnancy. So yeah, it was weird being in lockdown and being separated from family and friends and not being able to go and do the usual things that you'd imagine doing, you know, like going shopping for baby clothes with your mum or with your friends, or just going out and wearing pregnancy dresses and just enjoying being pregnant, but in society. It wasn't like that. I was locked away, and the only time I did go out was to go and see my dad and just check that him and my mum were okay, and didn't really see anybody else. So it was a really strange time. So going back to where we were up to with the birth story. So that Tuesday morning, the day from hell, the best day, but also the worst day of my life. I remember saying that after I'd given birth, but it was just a shit show. I managed to get out of the house. I don't even know how. I didn't have like a, you know, like sometimes on the on some of the American vlogs on YouTube, and like we've got like the birth outfit ready, and you know, the little hospital bag and everything's all prepped and this and that. There was none of that. I literally grabbed the nearest t-shirt I could find, which I remember was a white Ted Baker t-shirt with a floral design over the front. Couldn't have had a worse t-shirt to give birth in, honest to God. And I don't remember, I think I must have just worn leggings, but obviously like they were quick to come off anyway when we got to hospital. But yeah, managed to get myself in the car. Couldn't get in the car on the drive because the drive is at an angle like that. So we had to get the car onto the flat at the top of the drive, and then I needed assistance to get into the car because I was in that much pain, I couldn't even angle myself around to get in the car. Like, ridiculous. Honestly ridiculous. I just wasn't prepared for that because I'd never seen it being that difficult. I thought all the pain was supposed to start when you're at the hospital actually, you know, giving birth, but oh wow. So we got to the hospital at about, I want to say maybe 10 in the morning, 10:30. And I had to be wheelchaired from the car into the delivery suite because baby was considered early, and because I was geriatric, I had all of the options taken away from me in terms of where I wanted to give birth. And I think that was one of the things that upset me most. It might sound a bit ridiculous, and there are a lot worse things that can happen, and I am grateful that I was able to go to a hospital, but it really pissed me off. because I just felt like I'd built up this image of having a birthing pool, going into a birthing suite, you know, with low lighting, soft music, and really an environment that's going to help you produce oxytocin. Because if you've watched any pregnancy videos, birth videos, you'll understand how important oxytocin production is. And I'm fairly sure that there was probably not a lot of oxytocin going on in my body that day. I got wheeled into a delivery room. It was clinical, it was white, it was bright, it was horrible. I got put straight on the bed. I didn't even have enough strength because the pain was that intense. I couldn't even get on all fours, I couldn't turn over. I was just useless. It was just not how I thought that it would be. And it did make me sad. And I know it's one of those things, and I know people have been through a lot worse, and you know, I do count my blessings, because at the end of the day, I came out of it okay. You know, I have a healthy little boy. We did have some complications after birth, and I will talk to you about that. So it did end up being quite a traumatic experience, but it could have been a lot worse, and I do feel lucky, and I do feel blessed. So I wouldn't want anyone watching this to think, oh, you know, it's not like you died, or you know, it's not like anything happened. You know, you've got a child, and it's, you know, I think what it is, it's just that birth is such an important thing, probably like one of the most beautiful, important moments that a woman can go through. And to feel like you're just sort of not able to control that situation, it was just, yeah, I don't know, it just made me feel sad, because I just felt like I just couldn't contribute. I think that's the other thing. Yeah, I think that is it. I felt like I couldn't contribute. I felt a little bit like, why can't I do this? Like, I'm supposed to be a mother. Like, why can I not birth this child how I should be birthing it? I guess I've built up this picture in my head of how it might be. So I think that for me is like an important message for you guys, is that try not to get too hung up on any particular idea or plan. Because I had a birth plan which was, you know, I didn't want, I'll talk about pain relief as well, so I made it quite clear on my birthing plan, I didn't want any drugs. I wanted it to be a wholly natural birth, or as natural as possible. I definitely didn't want to, you know, have a C-section. I didn't want any forceps or anything like that. Now, obviously, if it came down to it, and I knew that it was like a life or death situation for either my baby or me, then okay, different story. You know, when you're faced with that and having to make that decision, then you have to make that at the time. But my preference was, this is going to be a vaginal birth, and I don't want an epidural, because I was advised not to do that for various reasons, and I agreed with the reasons, and I didn't want that. And again, you know, anyone who's had an epidural or wants one, you know, go for it. Like, that's your choice. And I think that's the point of this video as well, is that I would like to stress to you that everything is your choice until it's not. So my choice was to have the birthing pool. I couldn't. That was taken away from me. There was no way that I would have been able to climb into a birthing pool, even if they'd said to me, feel free to go into the room with the birthing pool. It wasn't an option. It was straight on my back. So I kind of just like was on the bed and like, sort of, I was in that much pain I couldn't even, it wasn't like I was sort of, I wasn't making like noises. I didn't even have the strength to talk. So I was almost like, like one word answers. So like, you know, someone would say to me, do you want a drink of water? And I'd just be like, well, no. That's it. Like, that is all I could do, which is ridiculous. But it was just not an environment that made my body feel calm. So for me, there was just too much talking. The midwives were lovely, like they were really lovely, but there was too much chatting about, you know, what they'd watched on TV, and you know, I had to like sort of keep looking at baby's dad as if to say, shut the hell up. Like, can you and can all of you just stop talking? Because my primal instinct here is to go into myself and be quiet to give birth to my baby, and at the moment all I've got is a room full of bright lights, noise and distractions, and it was just horrendous. And I think that made the pain worse, because I think it was just adding to the whole shock, you know, shock hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and all of that batters your oxytocin down. So if you're gonna, if my advice would be, and if I'd have known then what I know now, then I would have even gone as far as like taking headphones in, you know, having like calm, gentle, quiet music in the background on either a phone or speaker. I probably even would have taken a blindfold in just to shut the light out, because it wasn't even one of those rooms where I could say, could we turn the lights down? Like it, nah, it was just, no, it wasn't great. But anyway, it is what it is. So yeah, so I was there until, I mean, I was there for quite a long time. So we got there, like I say, about 10:30. And as soon as I went through the room, despite the fact that I'd said no pain relief, I just asked them, I was like, apart from an epidural, like, what can we do? What's the pain relief? Like, what are the options? And they said, well, we've got gas and air, which didn't even touch the sides. So I tried using that, and it was just, again, just my whole body was just in a spasm all the time with the pain. So then the next thing that they administered was the injection in the leg. You'll have to forgive me, I think it was, I can't remember the name of it now. I'll put it in the comments anyway. Those of you who have done your research will know what I'm talking about, but it was pain relief. You can only have it, I think it's every 4 hours. Can't remember. Anyway, I'll look it up and I'll put it in the description. But that took the edge off a little bit, not a lot, a little bit. So it was just a case of, you know, just riding through, going with the waves, going with the body, going with the contractions. Again, like I just didn't have a choice to get up, to move about. It was just not an option. At one point, they rolled me on my side because I think we'd sort of felt it might be a little bit more comfortable for me. And that's the point when I did a poo on the bed. So yeah, that was nice, real nice. And I knew I was doing it as well because I was pushing at the time, because they'd started encouraging me to push at that point. So, you know, she said, if you feel the urge to push, just push. And she kept saying, push into your bottom. And I kept thinking, what do you mean push into my bottom? Like, it would have been so much, would have made more sense to my brain if she'd have said, push as if you're having a poo. I'm like, right, if that's what you mean, then I'll just have a poo. So I think at this point as well, I'd had a catheter inserted. So the other thing that they did, well, that might have been just after the poo moment actually. So they put me back on my back and then my legs went in stirrups. Again, after what I've researched, listening to the, you know, the doulas and listening to people who are experts in preferred birthing positions to get the baby out, being on your back, and I mean like proper on your back, not even like slanted down like this, being on your back with your legs up in stirrups, not the way, because you are working against gravity, and it's like trying to push a truck up a hill to then get out the other side. So no wonder it was such a slow, long, painful labour, because I did spend most of it on my back in the stirrups. Again, not really how I envisioned birth to be, but there we are. So what happened next? So yeah, so they rolled me back onto my back. I had a catheter inserted because I hadn't had a pee for hours. I think because of the drugs that I'd taken. They had administered a drip just to keep fluids up. They put a heart rate monitor on baby's head, so they threaded that through my cervix, and they'd managed to get that on baby's head just to keep an eye on him and to make sure he was doing okay, with it being like a sort of a slow progression of the cervix dilation. And yeah, so when they put the catheter in, a full bucket of water of pee came out. So they were like, oh, that might give baby a little bit more room now. And I was thinking, oh, thank God. Like, what a relief. Then at another point, because things were not progressing as quickly as we would like in terms of cervix dilation, a consultant doctor came into the room, and I kid you not, he put one arm in my vagina, another arm in my anus, and just tried to make sure baby was in the right position to help him come out as naturally as possible. Now, that was a moment I will never forget. Not for good reasons. Not for good reasons. I'd like to forget it, if I'm honest, but I think when you've had an arm up the front and an arm up the back, I don't think that you can ever really forget that. So yeah, that was a defining moment in life. So then after that, we did eventually sort of start the real hard pushing. I remember the feeling of the ring of fire as his head crowned. That was interesting. And it honestly, it just felt like I just couldn't wait for it to be over. I was like, oh my God, like, it felt like I'd pushed so many times and it felt that painful. I was like, surely by now I should have birthed like 4 babies. Like, it was ridiculous. But anyway, baby came. At this point, it was about 6:30 at night. So we'd been in there all day, so it was a long, hard slog. And it was just the most surreal feeling I've ever felt in my life. And again, because I wasn't expecting to see him so soon, it was like an additional, oh my God, like he's here. Like, we're not ready for him. Like, we'd still had stuff to buy, I mean, the saving grace is I had got him Moses basket, so at least he had somewhere to sleep, winner, winner. But was not prepared. But it was the most beautiful, breathtaking, unbelievable moment to see that little face, that little cherub who I'd been talking to all those months whilst working at home, rubbing my belly. I remember I used to say to him, Mummy loves you, Mummy will always love you. And, I used to play little songs to him and talk to him, and I just couldn't believe that he was here. And he was just a little dinky dot. So he was just under 6 pounds. So he wasn't obviously a big baby, but he was a normal weight for that gestation point. So even though he was small, he was where he should have been in terms of, like the growth charts. And then he came straight onto my chest, and he did go straight for the boob. Good lad. He knew where to go, and it was lovely. I was really spaced out. I was shaking a lot. There was obviously a lot of adrenaline in my system. I'd also said no to the oxytocin injection to help birth the placenta, because again, I just felt that the body knows what it needs to do. And I just wanted to keep things as natural as possible. So I declined the oxytocin injection. And actually, just kind of like backtracking. So I didn't have forceps or any instruments. Obviously, just had the arm in the arm. Before I pushed him out. But My mum had to have forceps with both me and my brother, so I am wondering whether, just in terms of our genetics and the way that our body's made up, that there may be something there in the genetics which makes, you know, the women in my family less able to sort of cope with childbirth, because that is a thing. I don't know. I don't know whether hypnobirthing would have helped, but if I'm honest with you, I don't think it would have done in terms of me practicing, you know, like knees in, ankles out, or any positions, because I genuinely, honestly could not get into a position other than just be flat out on my back. So, would it have helped? Maybe, in terms of, you know, keeping myself a bit more calm, but I just felt like I'd lost all control, because it was my mind battling against my body just closing up. Like, everything was just going against what I wanted it to do. It's not that I wanted to sort of give up to the pain, but I felt it impossible. Like, it was impossible. So yeah, so maybe I'm better equipped at 140 kg deadlifts than I am at giving birth. maybe that. So yeah, so baby was led on my chest. So just to talk to you a little bit about what happened next. Sip of the brew, which is now going rapidly cold. They do what they call the APGAR checks. I can't remember how often it is, maybe like 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I don't actually know without going and reading about it again. But they had done one check and he was fine. As I say, he had his eyes open, he was trying to feed, you know, he was just led there. He felt a good temperature. His skin, you know, looked okay. He wasn't like overly flushed. It wasn't blue. He was just a pale, I guess, like me, with a little bit of rose on his cheeks. But I think it was the second test, and the student midwife came over and she picked up his wrist, and it was limp. And there was just nothing there. At the time, I didn't realise anything was wrong, but there was, and he'd stopped breathing. But because you know, you're so distracted with the fact that you've got this newborn and you don't know what's normal and what's not normal, and you know, you just think baby's eyes are open, he's fine, baby's eyes are closed, or he's sleepy. And this is all within the first, you know, 5 minutes of birth, by the way. So there's been a lot going on. Your body's been through it. You know, you're a bit like, whoa, like, what's just happened to me? You're feeling all these feelings of stress and pain, but yet also this amazing feeling of elation, and the fact that you've just birthed a human being, like your child. It's like your mind just couldn't be going through any more than that. So they whipped him off my chest, and the midwives, as you'll hear all the time, are very, very good at speaking very calmly and like, everything's normal, and we're just going to pop him over here on the table, and we're just going to help baby with his breathing. Fine, you know, absolutely fine. I'm just here chilled, I'm all spaced out still. So they took him over to the resus table and gave him a bit of a rub, and I could hear between the two of them, he's not coming round, you know, he's not really, like, they were looking at each other, and yeah, he's not really doing what we need him to do. And then I heard the student midwife say to the head midwife, shall I pull the cord? Shall I pull the cord now? And she said, yeah, pull it now. So she pulled the emergency alarm. Literally within about 5 or 10 seconds, the doors barged open into the delivery room. And I'm not even joking you, if I could find scenes from the original video, because we did get a video actually of the birth, I would show you them. Can't find the video. I think it's on a memory stick somewhere, because it was that big, that long. About 10 people rushed in, doctors, you know, nurses, and all surrounded my little boy. And I remember the main doctor who took charge, he pulled out the resus equipment, he pulled out a breathing tube and a pump, and he put a mask over my baby's face, and he was doing sort of little, shallow chest pumps, breathing, come on, and again, come on, and again, can we get him breathing? And there was just nothing. And again, like at the time, I didn't know what was going on. When I watched the video back, oh wow, I'd just cry my eyes out. Because I can't believe how close he was to potentially not being here now. And had I have had a home birth or not been able to get to the hospital, I don't think he would be here now. So despite the fact that I moan about being in that delivery suite and that it was not conducive to an oxytocin filled birth, if it wasn't for them and it wasn't for the hospital, then my baby likely wouldn't have survived. So they did manage to get him breathing, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be making this video now. And they said, what we're going to do is going to send him up to neonatal. At the time, he wasn't straight into an incubator. He was just put in an open cot, if you will, put on a trolley. And they said, we'll take him up to the ward. You can go and get checked into the maternity ward tonight, just so that you can sit down and have some rest, and then we will call you when he's ready to be seen. Because it was lockdown, I had to go up on my own. So I went up to the maternity ward, and I just sat there. Obviously I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't going to be sleeping, I just wanted to make sure that baby was okay. And then I had about 2 or 3 visits. The first visit they said, we're worried about your baby, we think that he may have sepsis. The second visit, when I thought they were coming to tell me that I could go and see him, they said, we're worried about your baby, we think he might have meningitis. And then finally on the third visit, this was about 4 in, so I think we'd left the delivery room by about 8 o'clock. And just to backtrack as well, I did obviously give birth to my placenta normally. I think one of the nurses caught it in a bucket. There was a hell of a lot of blood, so just pre-warning you guys, it might happen to you. It does happen to most people, but I wasn't, again, prepared to see that amount of blood on the floor. So when I finally got up off the bed to go to shower myself and go to the toilet, I was very, very wobbly, and I remember having to step around just like the pools of blood between the bed and the blood had obviously just travelled and splashed, but it was everywhere. So I remember just stepping around my own blood, and it was just like, oh wow, okay. So that is something else to maybe be prepared for, which I wasn't. I'm not really a squeamish person, but I think it's it's just, again, you just don't really know what to expect. They also told me that I had a very rare type of placenta. So they said I had and I will put this in the description if I get it wrong. I'm pretty sure it was a velamentous cord insertion. Apparently they can sometimes detect this on ultrasound, so when you go for your regular scans, but it wasn't picked up on mine, and it is something that can put baby at risk, because I think it can contribute to problems, potentially premature birth, but other complications as well. But yeah, didn't know about that, so it was that was interesting to learn, because they'd said, oh wow, we've never had one of these before, it's that rare. And I was like, wow, okay. So yeah, so then going back to being on the ward, so when I first went to see him, he was in neonatal, and it was just like, there was just a sea of babies, and it's so weird because you're looking for your baby and you're like, oh my god, which one's my baby? But then I spotted him straight away, bless him, and he was in a little incubator, and he had swallowed and breathed in a lot of my blood. So when I got there was a nurse just sort of shringing blood out of him. that was not very nice to see. And yeah, basically didn't get any sleep from that point on for the next week or so. It was just odd bursts of a couple of hours here and there. It was a really strange time. We were in neonatal for 9 days. I actually checked myself out of the maternity ward the day after I gave birth because I felt like it would be more beneficial for my baby for me to not be in the ward because I wasn't getting any rest, I wasn't getting any sleep, and I couldn't obviously, like, just be who I needed to be for him. So I checked myself out, but then I would come back to the hospital every day, and some of the nights I was allowed to stay over, but they only had 2 family rooms, I think, at the time. So if there was someone staying in there, then you weren't allowed to stay. And then at the time, I was doing shifts with baby's dad to make sure that someone was sat with him and just watching whilst the other person kind of caught up on sleep, because I was also trying to feed him. So that was also what I was trying to do. But because he was premature, I wasn't allowed to get him out of the incubator for a couple of days, and that meant that they were feeding him on dextrose solution. Not good. You don't want your baby to be fed on that. But there wasn't really anything else that they could feed him on until they started him on a formula. We didn't want him on formula. We ended up buying an organic formula because we were so conscious about the ingredients that are used in the other formulas. And it was like, well, do you know what, if push comes to shove and my milk hasn't come in yet and I've not been able, probably because I hadn't had that skin to skin contact with him, so my milk wasn't being produced because my body needed to be close to him in order to stimulate the hormones for milk production. So it was all effed up. So that was stressing me out as well. But after a couple of days, they were able to get him out of the incubator and we could do skin to skin, which was really nice. And I think that helped to stimulate the milk production hormones. Once I started getting a little bit of milk, probably around day 4, it was suggested that I go on a breast pump machine. Now, the ones in the hospital are like supreme strength. And honestly, out of all the breast pumps I've tried and bought, and I've spent loads of money on crap, the hospital ones were phenomenal. However, they are the ones, or they were at the time, where you have to physically sit and hold the suction cup on your boob. So if you're trying to do other things and you're busy, they're not ideal. But if you're in neonatal or you're having to be in hospital, they're great because you're not going to be doing anything anyway other than the odd nappy change and trying to get some sleep. But when I talk about sleep in neonatal, so we were feeding my little one every 2 hours. It was every 2 hours on the dot. So I'd feed, and that would take probably up to half an hour. And then I would go to bed, try to get some sleep. And then by the time I got to sleep, I'd probably have about 60 minutes. And then the midwife would knock and say, "You need to wake up, baby needs feeding." And I'd be like, not know what effing day it was. And it was that continuously every 2 hours. So it was like 12 o'clock, midnight, and then 2 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock. And then morning comes, and then you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in an asylum. Like, what the hell? And you get so emotional, and I was so teary and so drained. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how long my body can keep going like this. I was pumping, drinking, pumping loads, like I've never seen so much milk come out of me. My boobs were massive. At one point, I remember when I came home one day just to get a quick, shower and change, and I walked into the bathroom naked, and my boobs, and I've got natural boobs, they were like bigger than some false boobs, and they were rock hard. They were like rugby balls on my chest, and I just was like, oh my God. Like, they looked like they were going to burst any minute. They were solid, and I was like, oh my God, I hope I've not got that mastitis thing that they talk about. But it's just that they were just absolutely bulging, and oh God, the relief of expressing milk when they were like that. Oh my God. I could literally, I'm not even joking, I had to stand over the sink and just keep squeezing my boobs just to get rid of some of the excess milk. Because I'm like, it's painful. Like, wow, that's just brought a memory back. I'd forgotten about that. So yeah, so those of you who are maybe slightly on the smaller side, like, get ready to potentially have massive boobs. Yeah, they're not massive now, of course, because they go down. But yeah, so we were in neonatal for 9 days, and there was all sorts going on in that 9 days. And to be honest, it felt like 9 weeks. He had to have a lumbar puncture because of this suspected meningitis, which he didn't have. He didn't have anything wrong with him. He just needed a little time to develop and come round. The reason why we were in there for so long, by the way, so this is another tip, is because your baby has to achieve certain tasks, if you will, in order to be allowed home. The biggest thing that was stopping my little boy coming out and going home was the fact that he wasn't feeding enough. He was, but what we discovered the problem was the teat on the bottles that we were using. So I was pumping breast milk and we were putting the milk into the bottles so that the nurses could also feed him if we were not there, even though we were there most of the time. And he had to have a certain amount of milk in a certain time frame for him to get tick. The goal was to get a full allocation of milk at every feeding time for at least 24 hours, and then he could go home. We were probably in there an extra 4 or 5 days longer than we should have been, just because nobody thought to check trying a different teat. It just dawned on me one day. I just felt it must be that mother's instinct. I just thought, he's hungry. There's nothing wrong with him with his appetite, despite the fact that he had also been on a feeding tube and force fed like a massive amount of milk. I just said, can we just try another teat? Like, there's something not right here. Like, he's hungry. It's not that he's not got an appetite. So I got an old school rubbery teat, whacked it on the bottle. Bob's your uncle. Gulped, probably in about 5 seconds, what he would have taken about half an hour to drink otherwise. And within 24 hours we were out there. I couldn't have been happier to just break free, because I felt like I was in a prison. So that in a nutshell was my birth story with my first child. And it would be wrong of me to not talk to you a little bit about me and sort of my body, because I'm a fitness coach, and how I felt. There's lots of other stuff I could talk to you about as well, like, you know, all the stuff that comes with being a new mum, and I'll probably do another video on that. If you'd like me to do that, please drop it in the comments below. I'd be more than happy. Anything that you want to know, just let me know in the comments, and I will, you know, I'll cover that in my next video. But body-wise, so a lot of people talk about, you know, snapping back. You don't snap back. You know, and this is coming from a health and fitness coach who is fully qualified personal trainer. I've had my own coaching business now for nearly 8 years. I've helped hundreds of women transform their body, mothers, non-mothers, and I did my own transformation after the pregnancy. Now, I did what a lot of women do, and I got back into exercise at around about week 4. I would recommend that you don't do that and that you wait a little bit longer, but then again, you know, listen to your body. But I went back to the gym and I did start off, you know, gently. I very quickly realised that my strength was nowhere near what it was pre-pregnancy, and I didn't train a lot during pregnancy because the gyms were closed. I did the odd home workout, but nothing, you know, major. So I had to work at it. I had to work, you know, to get myself back into that gym routine, and I found it hard because I didn't have the energy. I was breastfeeding. I needed my calories to feed my child, and you know, they say breastfeeding in itself does help you to burn through a lot of calories, and it does, but you also have to replenish that. So you do have to keep eating, you do have to drink a lot, staying hydrated, and it took me probably about 7 months before I started to feel better in terms of my hormones. I was very up and down. I went through a very emotional stage, as a lot of women do. You know, I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm a very strong woman, but when you are fatigued, you're exhausted, it doesn't mean that you're not happy. Like, obviously you're happy to be a mum and you've got that beautiful baby, but you also feel like shite. And there's absolutely no shame in that. And I will, I'll stick up for any woman who is going through that. I went through a lot of teary days. I felt like, my life as it was, being a business owner, being a very independent woman, it had changed, completely changed. But you just have to find a way. You have to find a way to adapt, and you've got to, admit to yourself and understand that you're not the same person as you were before. You are different, but you've not completely lost yourself. You just had to change how you do things. So I did get back into a regime, but I found what helped me the most was my diet. So in the early days, I was doing a lot of snacking. I didn't have time to cook meals, so I was eating things that I probably shouldn't have been eating, and I was just really trying to keep my milk supplies up, if I'm honest. But eventually, I found my footing again, and as I say, around about 6-7 months, I got plenty of energy to start training regularly, and it was focusing on the resistance training. So I got myself back in the gym, and you can do it at home. You do need some weights, some small weights and resistance bands, things like that. But you can do it because I've helped, like I say, hundreds of women get back in shape. And actually, including myself and the women that I've helped, those that have come to me who have had children have found themselves in much better shape now after children than pre-pregnancy, because I've given them the guides and the tools that they were missing from their old workout regimes and their old diets, which they thought were the right thing to do. So any of you who are watching this, if you are in the position where you've had a baby and you are looking for some support and some guidance in getting back in shape, then get in touch with me. So you can find me on Instagram. I will make sure I drop my handles in the description. I'm also on Facebook, so you can add me as a friend on Facebook. And I've got a website as well, which is lucyanjuna.com. But please reach out. That's what I'm here for. If you feel like you're at that stage where, you've got clearance to exercise, you are feeling a little bit more like yourself in terms of hormones, reach out, and I will share with you what I did. But I actually got in photo shoot shape. And I had my first photo shoot, I think it was about 8 to 9 months after I'd given birth, and I felt amazing. So it can be done, and I'm here to share with you how I did that. But I hope that you have found this video really useful. It has gone on a little bit longer than I hoped. It was supposed to be a 30-minute video. It's turned into almost an hour. But I think I've managed to get out a few things, a few details that perhaps I hadn't thought about before I pressed record. So it's been great for me, because in a way it's a bit of therapy for me, to sort of get some of that stuff off my chest. And I hope more than anything that it helps some of you guys, and that you felt like this was useful. And all I can be is honest. And if you have any questions or any comments, please drop them below. And don't forget to give me a follow, and I will do some more videos.